Some of you have probably seen over the past couple of weeks, there have been a couple of profiles of Alicia. One that I particularly enjoyed in the Sunday Times about how she spends her Sundays. But another one that I'm going to quote from, so I hope that you were quoted accurately in the story. Alicia is a lifelong New Yorker who's worked in a variety of roles which, contrary to appearances, do have a common theme. She's been able to transition from being an organizer and legal services advocate to working in city government to then working at Goldman Sachs, one of the most powerful financial institutions in the world, and now coming back and working in progressive mayoralty. She concedes that that narrative is unusual, but makes clear it is all connected through her work of trying to improve the city. Please join me in welcoming Alicia Glen.
Thank you so much, Deborah. And I thought you were going to give me some nail polish advice color, which I've been getting a lot of interesting suggestions from my Sunday routine. I have to say I'm incredibly glad to be back here again, despite the fact that I haven't seemed to do anything new with the lighting. They still look like these weird amoeba things. I mean, this is the weirdest ballroom, I have to say. Maybe next year we will have a better decor. And I want to bring greetings from the mayor, and you don't get the mayor in person. And we probably won't be breaking any major news today, despite the hope of some of the press. But I am here today to talk to you about why housing and why the mayor's housing plan matters more than ever. First, I want to take a little diversion. I want to congratulate Jessica Katz and Howard Slatkin. I also want to acknowledge all the amazing city administration officials who are here, but I want to focus on these two folks for a minute, because these incredible professionals have honestly changed the landscape of New York City and New Yorkers in a very meaningful and powerful way. And they've also had an incredible impact on my work to date. I have to say, and Jessica, I mean this with all the sort of self-reflection that I can, you are one tough cookie, and you are caring and brilliant, and you are going to be an amazing leader in this field for many years to come. I have been so lucky to work with you. And for Howard, she's the best. I may see a little of myself in her. She is the best. And Howard, I know that Carl tried to lay it all out, but I cannot even begin to tell everybody what it was like to spend the first 4 weeks of my new job locked in City Hall with Howard Slatkin, trying to explain to me the complexities and intricacies of zoning, inclusionary housing, large-scale plans, and basically drawing diagrams that no human being who's ever mastered the TED Talk could possibly have understood. But you got me through, Domino. You have been an unbelievable leader, and I can't even begin to imagine the impact you're going to have over the next couple of years. Okay. So I think it was actually 1 year ago today that I was here to lay the groundwork and really discuss the principles guiding our plan for developing and preserving 200,000 units of affordable housing. And we've made incredible progress. More than 18,000 starts. That's 9% of the way to the goal, with 11% into the 10 years. And I can and I will report on how we are doing with many of the early milestones that we laid out in that plan, and relay some stories about the amazing projects we're doing and talk about new programs and policies. But I think we do need to take a step back and remind ourselves, why are we at this lunch? Why does housing matter? Why does the housing plan really matter? And here's why. Because if we want a city that embraces growth, that is diverse, is inclusive, is funky, is fiscally sound, is a city of real opportunity and innovation, there is no more important work than this. Housing is the #1 expense for the vast majority of New Yorkers, and where you live is one of, if not the, defining characteristics of a New Yorker. As we all know, now from my Sunday routine, this is how we talk about New Yorkers and who we are. I'm an Upper West Sider. My friend Judy is from Jackson Heights. Her friend grew up in Sheepshead Bay. Her sister just moved to Bed-Stuy. Her cousin actually comes from Bed-Stuy. This is the vernacular of our city. And it doesn't matter if you're a busboy or a banker or a teacher. Housing is fundamental to a person's life, to their identity, to their economic security, and to their sense of possibility. And we are at a real turning point in New York City's history, where that fundamental building block of what defines a person or what defines a family's ability to succeed is under real threat for millions of New Yorkers. So that's why it matters, and that's why the success of our plan is so crucial to the future of the city that we love. So let me lay out the big picture again for you. Let's remind ourselves of the basics. We are literally in a housing emergency. The Census Bureau has found that our vacancy rate, and that's our official vacancy rate, is about 3.5%. And it's a crisis across the board. Simply to keep up with population growth, we expect the city will need to add 160,000 units of market rate housing in addition to the 200,000 units in our plan just over the next decade. But that market is tightest at the low end, about 1.8% vacancy for units with asking rents at under $800. And that, of course, is a direct result of shrinking supply, of affordable housing particularly. New York has lost about 250,000 rent-regulated units since decontrol began in 1994, and at least 35,000 units since the 2011 state rent regulation reforms. And this turnover has real consequences for the city's families, especially given how rents and utility costs continue to rise while real wages decline. Our latest data, and I'm not proud of this, is that now 56% of rental households are rent burdened. That means spending more than a third of your income on housing. That's worse than it was when I stood here a year ago, and up more than 10 points, a little more than in a decade. And while the affordability gap is particularly acute for low-income households, our nurses, our school teachers, our first responders are also feeling the pressure of rising rents. And there is growing income inequality in both the highest income and the lowest income neighborhoods. And that really limits many families' access to education, to jobs, and other opportunities that make New York a beacon for the rest of the world. So it's about housing, but it's not just about housing or buildings. Because a building isn't just a pile of bricks, and as the mayor said, a unit isn't just something we're running around tallying all day. It is a place where kids do homework, where families and friends eat together. It is somebody's home. So while we love to talk to housers, our conversations extend far beyond the housing community because our efforts to affordably house hundreds of thousands of today's and tomorrow's New Yorkers is tantamount to our efforts to strengthen New York City's neighborhoods. So we're talking to planners, local and global business leaders, community groups, local officials about their goals, about opportunities not just around housing per se, but about improving access to jobs and real skill training, about infrastructure in the broadest sense of the term. Mass transit, parks and open space, schools, daycare, retail and local services, the cultural and health assets that every neighborhood should have and deserve. And next week, when our executive budget and our 10-year capital plan are released, you'll see that we intend to do more than just talk about comprehensive community building and complete neighborhoods. We're actually putting our money where our mouth is. We're aligning our land use policy and smart growth planning with capital and other investments. What a concept, but we're going to see it and we're going to do it. And this is a critical shift in the way the city is approaching implementing our housing goals, because we recognize that permitting additional density must be part of a holistic strategy to strengthen our neighborhoods. We also realize that approach costs real money and requires a level of coordination among agencies and engagement with stakeholders we have not seen for decades. But at the end of the day, it is the right way to do it, because we want our city to be a city of fantastic neighborhoods, where every neighborhood and every person has something to contribute and something to gain from this unique place that is New York City. So let me tell you a little bit more about the year I've had, at least at work. And I'm excited to share with you some of the highlights of how the plan has actually been going. So first, we doubled the capital budget for housing. Second, we added human capital, maybe equally as important for those of you who have to deal with all of us, so that we could actually implement and execute the plan. And that has helped fuel an incredible year. So we exceeded our calendar year 2014 goal of financing the creation and preservation of new affordable units by almost 1,400 units. We financed more than 17,000 units, enough to house nearly 42,000 New Yorkers. That's 4,500 units more than the average number produced in the years between 2004 and 2013. And by the way, to set the record straight, and 85% of those units were for families whose incomes were roughly between $25,000 and $67,000. This is a broad plan serving a broad range of New Yorkers. And it's probably the broadest and widest range ever attempted, because we realize that while low-income families' needs are not being met, we also have middle-class families whose housing needs are not being met by private market development. And we also need to focus on our more vulnerable populations, creating more housing options for the homeless, for seniors, with individuals with disabilities. And we are, in fact, stretching public dollars, leveraging more private investment, and streamlining the regulatory process. Shout out to HDC. They issued $1.9 billion of debt in 2014, making HDC first in the nation among all municipal housing bond issuers for the year. This is a serious accomplishment, a serious plan in real time. We issued new term sheets and launched new programs with such fabulous new acronyms as the ELA, the SARA, the NIHOP, the NICAPUC, the something like that. These are all real programs in real time, driving production. And we are making it easier to build. Agencies have worked closely together to streamline and coordinate permitting and inspection, using technology to make the approval process as efficient as possible. We've made great strides here, and we will continue this work. I know there is no such thing as too easy a regulatory process. HPD made really significant changes to the voluntary inclusionary housing program, eliminated bottlenecks, experimented with new ways of doing architectural and engineering reviews. And as a result, in the first 6 months of FY15, HPD closed on more affordable units in that program that had been produced in any fiscal year since 1988 when the program started. We also translated Housing Connect materials to the additional, 6 or 7 languages, enabling more New Yorkers to apply for this increase in affordable units. But of course, our housing plan is not just about what's shiny and new and rising out of the ground. In 2014, we financed the preservation of over 11,000 units across all 5 boroughs. And as we have always said, preservation efforts are just as important as new projects. Preservation to promote the physical quality, safety, and energy efficiency of buildings, preservation to address the financial and operational challenges owners face that endanger affordability, and preservation to protect New Yorkers who are facing displacement from rising rents, illegal evictions, and often harassment. It is all part of a proactive strategy. So we are working with communities to identify and preserve distressed properties and making investments that can have a stabilizing effect not just on those residents, but on the entire neighborhood. It is a more data-driven approach to preserving affordability by actually targeting property owners citywide who have existing regulatory agreements. They have tax benefits. They have rent-regulated units and rental subsidies. We're not going to let any of those units leave the system. Tomorrow, we're going to be launching a pilot help desk to reach small building owners to offer them financial, physical, and technical assistance in exchange for extended affordability. And I'll tell you why this matters. It matters because nearly 50% of units citywide are in buildings with fewer than 20 units. We talk a lot about density in big buildings, but that's an enormously important housing stock. And they are the vast majority of the housing stock in many of our most amazing neighborhoods. So we need to extend our outreach to small building owners to help preserve affordability in those neighborhoods. And those neighborhoods are the ones where market rents are rising most rapidly often. It's not sexy work, but it is the necessary work to keep communities diverse and affordable, particularly as we plan to grow some of those very neighborhoods. Another way we're working to keep people where they are is to protect people from being forced out by some very bad actor landlords. So then this past year, we joined forces with the New York State Attorney General, the State Division of Community Renewal, their TPU, and other city agencies to create a task force to combat tenant harassment and ensure that families have the right to stay where they are in their neighborhoods as those neighborhoods improve around them. This work will operate hand in hand with the free legal services that we're now offering for low-income families in 13 zip codes around the city, providing those folks with the resources they need to have representation in housing court. And then, of course, talk about sexy. This year, we launched the Asset Management Electronic Rent Roll Pilot for home and tax credit deals. And that will help us better ensure the income eligibility of tenants over the life of an affordability agreement. Look, this is stuff all rolls up to making this plan happen and shows the extraordinary commitment of the agencies to actually get stuff done. So I could go on and on about all the things that we're doing in City Hall and the agencies, but instead, let me give you a little glimpse into the year we're about to have. Year 2 is going to be big. The momentum continues. In the first half of fiscal year 15, we closed on 8,600 units already, so we are well on track to surpass the 16,000 unit target for the fiscal year. We will roll out and enact our mandatory inclusionary program. We will certify our first rezoning in East New York. We will move our housing text amendments through the approval process, bringing long, outdated regulations for medium and high-density areas into the modern era. Simple updates that will yield better quality and better-looking building and thousands of more units of affordable housing. I know, Geraldine, you'll be excited about that one. We will commence our feasibility study for Sunnyside Yards to explore the incredible potential for the creation of a dynamic, mixed-use, mixed-income neighborhood that could affordably house tens of thousands of people and new jobs for this 21st century. And we will work to reform 421A, which currently does not deliver nearly enough affordable housing for New Yorkers given the tax benefits provided. We will move forward with a robust pipeline of new RFPs for larger scale, mixed use, and mixed income development on city sites. We will move forward on a pipeline of projects through all of these programs. Ella, Sarah, the new infill programs where we cluster small sites together that, among other things, will generate thousands of new units for lowest income New Yorkers and provide jobs, promote home ownership opportunities for the middle class, encourage small multifamily rental and builders in lower density neighborhoods and beyond. And we will roll out our green preservation program to support energy retrofits in small buildings. There's so much more we are doing. I don't want to be a laundry list, but I want you to understand the breadth of this effort and how serious we are. So I think it's safe to say that I've heard from probably 2/3 of the people in this room over the past year who are excited about the momentum and about our new way of doing business. The emails, the calls, the texts, the homing pigeons carrying messages of encouragement and often constructive suggestions on how we could do better. There's been a lot of Monday morning quarterbacking, and that's okay. But I'm here to tell you that while we appreciate all of the feedback and the dialogue continues, it's time to start getting things done. There's always room for improvement, and the temptation to dive into the weeds of every aspect of the plan is irresistible for many folks. But we need to keep the big picture in mind. And the big picture is that the status quo in our city is not acceptable. There are too many people whose precarious housing situation threatens to undermine the very fabric of our city. People being forced out of their neighborhoods by rising rents, either because of the market or because of deregulation, or in some instances because of predatory landlords. People forced into the shelter system because there is no place literally to live. People moving to New York City who, instead of finding the opportunity to start the next great tech company, to open the best bakery, to design that perfect little black dress, they are finding that they cannot afford to stay here. And they go to places like Austin and Charlotte and Portland, and that's not okay. So if we don't do something about it, then the city becomes unrecognizable to all of us. So you heard it from the mayor a few days ago when we rolled out our One NYC plan. Now is the time to work on every possible front to ensure that our city is sustainable and resilient, economically, physically, and in the face of local and global challenges. We know there is no silver bullet that will help all of New York City's families who are here or who want to be here struggle because they can't afford a decent place to live. What there is a lot of hard work on all of our parts to keep people in their homes and to build a new stock of housing for our neighbors, our children, our parents, our next generation of artists, entrepreneurs, scientists, you name it. So we need to get riled up, and we need to get riled up in a productive way. We have to keep our eye on the prize, which is a New York City that is diverse, inclusive, funky, and prides itself on actually being what it has always been, a place for everyone. We know that there are very tough politics ahead, which is why now, more than ever, instead of squabbling over a particular AMI level or a parking requirement or litigating project to project, we need to work together to drive the bigger agenda. Let's make sure that this city remains the beacon of opportunity and diversity it is known to be around the world. Thank you.